Right, farmers are pleading with the state and federal MPs, the governments, to stop passing the buck as the agricultural worker shortage reaches crisis point. Despite this, the government, state and federal, are yet to agree to a country-wide travel scheme for farm workers or a streamlined quarantine system for foreign workers. President of the Victorian Farmers Federation, Emma Germano, she's had enough. She joins me now from Gippsland in Victoria. Emma, I'm trying, if I can, thank you for your time, to put this into perspective for people at home. We know that we've had shortages with workers. There's been some positive announcements that we'll have visa categories for people to come in from overseas. Most of us would think that that's sorted out the issues, but it hasn't, has it?
Absolutely not. Thanks for having me, Peter. You talk about the worker shortage and it being a crisis point. I mean, I just don't know how much longer we can talk about the crisis point. The reality is we simply do not have enough people in this country to do this work. And unless we want fruit rotting on the vines and vegetables rotting on the ground, then, we need some people to take some leadership and actually come up with a solution to the issue.
So just to break it down, the visas are there to bring the workers in, but they can't get in because there's not quarantine places. They can't move from Victoria to New South Wales. What are your issues?
All of those things that you've just mentioned are a problem. So very, at the top of the list is the fact that we just do not have meaningful quarantine pathways. So, today the Vic government announced that they would be bringing in another 1,500 workers through Tasmania for Victoria. But these ad hoc, today there's an announcement, tomorrow there's not an announcement. We're waiting for those announcements. It's just, there's no way that we can create any business confidence for farmers to actually go out and plant these crops, without that certainty that we're actually going to be able to harvest them. So whilst today's announcement was a small step in the right direction, we actually need a national plan now. We've been having this same conversation literally for 12 months and we are no further along in that conversation than where we were a year ago.
Yeah, that announcement you're referring to today was a number of states, Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria and Tasmania, I think. They've all come together. God help us, this is government, isn't it? An agriculture labour task force. But we've been talking about this for 18 months. Why have a task force? Surely they can do a Zoom conversation, sort out the bureaucratic issues, get moving and provide an access point. Once you've got the visas, I think that was a really hard thing. You've got the visas, now get them into the country, surely.
Absolutely. I mean, you know what we don't need? We don't need another task force. We don't need to agitate around what the problem is anymore. We actually need to just take that first step and actually enact a plan. We have to realise that Australia is one country. We have one agricultural industry, and the workers that move around doing the harvest for us, they move the whole way around the country. So we've got issues with border restrictions that make it really difficult. And even though we've been acknowledged as essential workers and technically you can get permits, that process is really difficult. It also means that people aren't willing to move across borders to go and do that work. And aside from that, again, we've got farmers who have a north property and a south property. We've got farmers who have farms across, state borderlines, and they're unable to get to this place called Australia that they farm in. We are a national system, and we need the states to actually start coordinating with some acknowledgement that we are indeed a national system of agriculture. I mean, aside from all of the other industries that I'm sure would agree with me in saying that we're one country.
And of course, if the farmer can't get the crop or the fruit or whatever it might be out of the paddock and to the market, it'll rot. They'll be in a worse place financially, but they won't plant again the next season. That's the risk we've got, isn't it?
Absolutely. The risk here is, well, firstly, you need some time to make these decisions. So we don't just plant our cauliflowers on my farm. We don't plant them one day and harvest them the next day. There's 4 or 5 months planning there. So when you're making that decision to actually plant another crop for the next year, you really want the confidence that you're going to have enough workers available to you to actually harvest that crop before you invest all of that money. 9 out of 10 farms in Australia are still family owned. So we're not talking about big mega corporations who, can take a hit for the year. We're talking about family farmers. This impacts their family directly. And then, of course, all of their employees that they actually have, often people will say, oh, we don't want to have foreign workers coming into the country because they steal Australian jobs. Well, right now we've got, one of the lowest unemployment rates we've seen in decades, and we just simply don't have enough workers. And what happens when we don't have those workers in the field is that it puts to risk all of those other Australians who are employed along the supply chain. So this is not a matter of it doesn't matter. It's a matter of this will impact Australians. It can impact Australians from the perspective that their fruit and vegetable prices might go up. We underpin an economy. We export to the rest of the world. This is an industry that needs to be taken care of. It's our primary industry. And we need to just ensure that we're not caught up in what is simply bureaucratic madness of task force after task force, reports, inquiries, submissions that have to be made. The problem is there are simply not enough workers. We've got the visa pathways to bring them into the country. We now need a quarantine system. And aside from the fact that we need a quarantine system, we need a roadmap. We need some hope for the future to give us that confidence in our businesses moving forward, because we want to know what those triggers are. At some point, on-farm quarantine will be a possibility. We've seen Queensland as a state do that. They've done a phenomenal job. Mm-hmm. Queensland and Tasmania are really bringing in all of the workers for the whole nation right now. Farmers understand how to pay for the costs of quarantine and to pro-rata that. The states need the same system. But this political football between states and feds, just sort it out. Farmers need the workers, and we've needed them for some time. And then we'll grow you all the food you need.
I tell you what, with that sort of spiel, Emma, watch out, you could end up the Agriculture Minister with that sort of common sense, can-do approach. Wouldn't that be nice? Emma Germano, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Peter.
I tell you what, there's a thing called National Cabinet. It happens every Friday. Why on earth that can't be there as a fast-tracked visa or permit system? Get it sorted out. You put a man on a moon, we can't even sort this out after 18 months. God help us.